Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here, yeehaw, and we are doing a tier list live, of course. It's Monday. On Mondays, we do tier lists, and on Wednesdays, we wear pink.
I mean, it's just plastic. It's really just...
I am here with 5 different chats. I'm here with YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, Kick, and people over on X, formerly Twitter, and right now we are going to be voting on this tier list. This tier list is based on how good you think a player is with this Pokemon. Basically, how good is this main? We're going to go through every Pokemon in the game, and you're going to decide how good a main of this is. Like someone who only plays, for instance, what we see on the screen right here as Cinderace. The chat is going to vote through this, and I'm going to talk through it with my opinions right here, but you will all be making the decisions on where to place these Pokemon. Either the S tier, the A tier, the B tier. Still got the B tier. Ugh. The C tier and the dreaded Deui Memorial tier. Obviously, our tiers are kind of broken up based on S tier being kind of broken, overpowered, A tier extremely good, B tier somewhat average, C tier below average, and D tier, this thing needs a lot of love. I'm ready to get this thing started, so let's go here. The voting should commence very, very soon. This timer will start to tick down, and then you will be able to vote for these Pokemon in real time, and it's happening right now. It's freaking happening right now. Everyone is voting for Cinderace right here, and we're going to take a look at the results as they're kind of coming in live. Cinderace right now, a lot of people are actually thinking this is a C tier choice, so players who play Cinderace, it's either C or B running away with this right now. I would say that Cinderace players are, I don't know, I think Cinderace players are, well, a lot of them play lane. I have to be honest, a lot of them play lane, which can be a little rough, and C is like running away with it. It actually might not be super unfair to say C. It could be a pretty reasonable place to put this Pokemon as the C tier. Although I do think a lot of Cinderaces at least know how to press their A button. I could say that they're definitely a B tier right here, but right now it looks like the chat is heavily favoring the C tier. So the question posed to the chat right now is about our Garchomp mains. We already have Cinderace voted into the C tier at the start of our competition, and now Garchomp mains are being rated right now, and as you can see, it's actually nail biter close between the B tier and the A tier. Only a few votes separate them, but I'm going to close this out here in just 1 second with the B tier narrowly taking this right here. B tier with 103, A tier right now with 96 votes. Garchomp mains, you have been decided to be a B tier main. I'm sorry, but the votes are for B tier. Gengar, I think someone who is a Gengar main, I don't feel like they're that bad necessarily. I just feel like Gengar has a tough time in general. But if someone mains the Pokemon, I actually think they could be kind of good. It looks like our chat right now, very close. A, B, and C, all like in a dead heat right now. No one thinks S, and no one thinks D, surprisingly. This is so close. A is out ahead, but not by very many votes right now, as it looks like Gengar is getting most of the votes for the A tier. B tier coming in a close second right here, and we're going to close this thing in just a second as it's really getting close. It's incredibly close right now, 81 to 78. The closest split, 81 to 83. B tier could overtake it in just 1 second. I'm going to close the poll. I'm not even going to look at the poll. I'm going to close the poll in another 10 seconds right here. I don't want to see exactly where it's at. The poll is almost closed. I know it's incredibly close. We're going to close this poll in 3, 2, 1. It's tied. We need one more vote. We need one more vote. It's tied. 87-87. B tier gets it. B tier got it right before A tier. B tier wins. Gengar, the chat has spoken. You are a B tier Pokemon. Interesting. Voting is underway for Cramorant. Cramorant right now, wow, it's between A and S are the top categories. I actually do think that Cramorant is a very solid Pokemon, and I think anyone who spends the time playing them is actually probably pretty good. It's a very low pick rate, and it looks like A tier is running away with this right now. Absolutely crushing it right here. And I think this is pretty fair. That's probably where I would put it too, either A or honestly even S. The thing about Cramorant it takes a lot of skill, especially the dive build, and nobody plays this Pokemon unless they're like really into it. I don't think we even need to let this vote go on too much longer. We have 230 votes in right now, and A tier is absolutely running away with it. Cramorant, our first Pokemon to make it up into the A tier. I'm very curious to see what's going to make it into our S tier right here as we move on to Alolan Ninetales. Dang, this is so fun. Holy, this is so fun. Oh, man. A lot of the chat's saying A, a lot of the chat's saying B. We only have 2 votes for the D tier, and I happen to agree that this is not a D tier at all. I feel like this is usually a very solid ally. Most Alolan Ninetales. We got a lot of A's and B's right now. S doesn't look like it's going to make it in there, so this could be our next A tier Pokemon. And it looks like it's going to be. Right now, it's sitting at 109 votes. B tier is somewhat close at 72. This is closer than Cramorant, but A is already, it's got 50% of the vote right now. And we're going to close this one out with Alolan Ninetales being our next A tier choice. I don't know. I think that's right. I actually agree with, I'm very much in agreement that I think Alolan Ninetales sits there as we get ready for Wiggly right here. I'm super interested to see what the chat says about Wiggly. We got I hate Wigglies in the chat. Straw polls coming in. Wiggly mains. Wow, C and D tier. No way. No way. Wiggly's getting absolutely roasted right now. C tier and B tier going at it right here, but a lot of people are saying C. We got B tier coming up, saying it's kind of an average choice. B tier and C tier are so close, but you know what's also close? For the first time, we have a close vote with the Deui Memorial tier, but also the S tier. This is so interesting as C tier is now starting to pull ahead. I have to be honest. I don't know actually what I expected. I don't know. But I'm actually really impressed. Or I guess I'm not surprised to either see high or low. I was thinking we could see an S tier choice, and I was also thinking that we could see a C or a D. I think A is an interesting option. I don't think it was going to be A for whatever reason, but I thought this could be like a top tier choice. We're going to give this another 10 seconds right here, but it looks like C tier is going to take it. With already 240 votes in, it's 8 votes ahead. I think it's going to go ahead and win this one. I'm surprised. I thought this could be one of the highest rated because I think good Wigglies are really, really good. But there you have it. Wigglytuff heading into our C tier as we get ready for our next Pokemon on our list, which is Machamp. We're kind of rating one trick, so we're kind of rating randoms. It's a little bit of both. As we're voting for Machamp mains right now. Right now, Machamp seems to be doing actually pretty good. Good amount of votes in A, good amount of votes in B. Very few in the Deui Memorial tier. A and B fighting neck and neck. B actually taking a little bit of a lead right here. It's still extremely close between these two categories, while C, S, and D really aren't there. Yeah, you know, the interesting thing about Machamp is I feel like it's either great or awful. I feel like I get really good Machamps and I get really bad Machamps. And it doesn't feel like it's too in between here. We got it really close. It's 3 votes separating these two as we're almost at 250 votes already. This is really, really close. I'm going to give it another few seconds here. And then we're going to pick it. It's so close. B tier is barely leading. B tier's going to take it now. 5 votes ahead. B tier takes it for Machamp, a Pokemon that could have been put into our A tier, but we did not see it happen as we get ready for our next vote right here, which is going to be Absol. Voting has begun for Absol as A tier, S tier, and D tier are all doing very well. I'm kind of surprised to see S. I'm not that surprised to see D tier, especially because it's a speedster. But A tier is actually doing really well. In fact, in general, it feels like the sentiment on Absol is either it's crushing it or it's not doing so well, as the A tier is now taking a pretty commanding lead. A lot of people voting B here. I think B is always a safe choice for a lot of these. And it's true, you could have, you know, an ally playing some of these Pokemon. They're just not that good, right? That's true of any Pokemon, essentially. So it's not surprising that we see a lot of B tiers and a lot of our votes, but it looks like Absol actually, one of the closer ones with a high S rating and very, very good into our A tier. It's, yeah, Absol's crushing it right here. Taking an A tier vote easy. One of our top rated. Interestingly enough, all of our top rated so far are attackers and speedsters in our A tier, which is, I guess, in my opinion, a little surprising as we get ready for our next ally right here, which will be the slowest of bro. And wow, the voting is coming in for Slowbro right now, and oh my god, it's an absolute landslide. Slowbro right now is looked at as the best ally by an insane margin. We have 130 votes for the S tier so far. Wow, this is just crazy, crazy good. I guess I'm not super surprised. And here's the thing. Something to recognize, I think looking at a tier list like this, it also lets you know how grateful your allies are that a player like you is on their team. As Slowbro right now, absolutely crushing it here. 170 votes. 170 votes for the S tier. Our first S tier choice. S tier with a bullet. Our next is going to be Mr. Mime. Voting is underway for Mr. Mime as it looks like S tier, D tier, A tier. It's so wow, this is the closest we've ever had this poll so far. Really close. S tier getting shrunken by B and A. C and D very, very close as well. As it looks like this Pokemon's going to settle somewhere into our B or A tier. But it's really close with our D tier and C tier. This is interesting. Wow, this is like one of the closest votes. I think this is the closest vote we've had so far. The closest Pokemon to make it to our Deui Memorial tier. The closest Pokemon in all of our categories, basically. And it looks like B tier is going to go ahead and take this thing. Right now, it's about 25 votes ahead of the next category. Doesn't look like it's going to be caught up anytime soon. So there you go. Mr. Mime is settling into our B tier right here. I think Mime players are actually probably better than that. But it's interesting to see what everyone's opinion on it is. As we move to our next Pokemon, how is that random Venu going to be on your team? We're going to find out right now. I have to be honest. For me, this is shocking. I do not think ally Venusaurs are often very good. I think they're not very good most of the time. My vote would be closer to the C tier or D tier, but the chat's really liking their ally one-trick Venusaurs. A lot of people are saying A, and A is actually crushing it right now. Even though I think Venusaur is a pretty good Pokemon, I don't feel like that I see a lot of Venusaur players as great players all the time. For me, this is way lower on my tier list. But it looks like A is going to be taking this thing. Very, very close right now, but A has 90 votes to 72. Yeah, taking over the B tier. Venusaur up in our A tier. Again, all attackers and speedsters so far. Very interesting as we get ready for our next vote. This one's going to be really wild. I don't even know where I put this right now. Wow, really close between all these tiers. B, A, and C all extremely close, as it looks like a lot of people are settling into B, thinking it's more of an average choice right now. It is interesting because Lucario doesn't get a ton of play, but I feel like people who are sitting on this Pokemon are probably pretty good. Then at the same time, I don't remember the last time I had a Lucario on my team that felt really impactful, right? I don't remember it. As B tier is running away with this thing. 82 votes. A and C very, very close, but B tier hanging out, it looks like, as our victor right here. Yeah, it's about 30 votes up. 25 at this point, so B tier is definitely going to take this thing. Lucario, a B tier Pokemon. All our all-rounders so far have hung out in this B tier as we get ready for our next speedster, Talon Flame. All right, voting is underway for Talon Flame, which I have to be honest, I would also be putting this in the D tier. I don't know. There are very few allies that are as often bad as Talon Flame allies. Some are great. Some are really great. But a lot of people sit on Talon and they're just, you know, all they do is score. They don't participate in fights. When you get a god level Talon, it's so nice. But I agree with you. I think most of the time players pick Talon Flame, it's like, it's rough. I kind of expected this, and to be honest, I think I would vote it there as well. But the chat has spoken overwhelmingly. Our first D tier choice, Talon Flame. As we move on to our next vote right here, because it's time to talk about Eldegoss. Ooh, Eldegoss running away with the S tier, A tier, a little B tier, a little D tier, which I'm kind of surprised by. S and A, very, very competitive right now. As you can see, once again, people are really valuing supports on their team, like defender support, getting a ton of votes right here for the S tier. And our poll is basically done. S tier with a landslide right now. And I think it is one of those situations where you're always happy to have a support on your team. Eldegoss is very good, and it makes its way into our S tier. Next, we're going to look at another attacker hitting our list, which is going to be Greninja. Greninja between D and C tier. I can't say I blame him. I can't say I blame him. I think Greninja allies are... look, all I'm saying out there is if you play Greninja, you got to be really good, because we all think you're already going to throw the game. And I'm not surprised to see this vote. Greninja, Talon, they're right there. This might even be a bigger landslide than Talon Flame. Absolutely dominating the D tier right now are Greninja and Talon Flame. As we move on to our next category, our next Pokemon, I should say, which is going to be Crustal. As votes are starting to flood in for Crustal right now, we've got A tier, C tier, B tier, S tier, and D tier. C, S, and D are really not catching up, as it looks like a lot of people are happy to have Crustal on their team. I can tell you, before the buffs, there's no way this Pokemon would be higher than the D tier. Before the buffs, I don't think anyone would have said anything other than D tier for this Pokemon. But now, it looks like either A or B. The vote's actually really close. We're going to run this out for maybe another 10 seconds or so, as it looks like A tier is going to take it, but B tier is very, very close. Coming from the chat, Ichi says, not a lot of folks play Crustal, and it's really good now. I feel like I see a lot of Crustal. I don't think it's A. For me, it's pretty hit or miss. And if I was saying someone was hit or miss, that's either going to be B or C for me, personally. But I do think Crustal is really, really good. And good Crustals are good. And Crustal is going to take our A tier right here. The first defender to make it up into our A tier. Everything else has been an attacker and a speedster, as we're going to be looking at another defender here next. Snorlax. Snorlax right now B tier with a heavy lead. C tier right on its tail. A, D, and S not really showing up for Snorlax. C and B very, very close. We're going to have to see how this turns out. Wow, there's just a couple votes separating them right now. Overall, that's not a good look for Snorlax. It's kind of the first defender to not really make it super high on our tier list right here. Looks like B tier is going to take it. I'm going to give us another few seconds right here, but they're up by about 10 votes right now with almost 250 votes in. 90 votes now for the B tier. That is going to lock this thing up. Snorlax, our first defender to not make it to the A or S tier. It hangs out in the B tier, as we're going to be looking at Charizard next. As it look, wow, people are roasting Charizard. Normally what Charizard's looking to do inside of a match, but people are absolutely roasting this Pokemon. It's just between the C and D tier right now. Jeez. Char, D tier, almost overtaking C, but it looks like it's going to sit into the C tier. Wow. Char getting absolutely obliterated on this tier list. You know, I have to say, I'm not super surprised. D tier might be a bit much, but at the same time, I mean, I do think that Char, it just has struggles evolving. It has you have Charmeleon at 4 minutes left in the match. Like, I know what it's like to have those Charizards on your team. So Charizard, very, very close to our D tier, but does make it into our C tier right here. As we get ready for our next Pokemon, Pikachu. As the voting is coming in, B tier overwhelmingly taking it right now early on. A tier now getting a great lead. S, C, and D doesn't look like they're in contention right here. Seems like a lot of people actually pretty happy to have a Pikachu on their team. And I would say I agree. I think especially after some of the buffs, Pikachu is definitely an A or a B for me. I did have Pikachu playing a Scope Lens earlier with a weakness policy. And even that Pikachu wasn't too bad, to be fair. So I actually think this is a pretty fair vote, as almost 250 votes are currently in. And we have Pikachu's A tier taking it. Another attacker making its way to the A tier. God, I'm so surprised to see so many attackers right here. And now we're going to look at our next Pokemon here. Not Zoroark, but Zeraora. Decidueye Memorial tier and the C tier fighting with the B tier, actually. This is actually more of a split vote than I expected to see here. C tier right now in the lead. Interesting. B tier, very, very close on its heels, with the D tier not too far away, but it looks like it's going to be somewhere between C and B, as B is actually getting quite a few votes here. Interesting. Zera mains have the micro for team fights? Maybe. A lot of chats. This is so close. I'm going to have to let this vote run for a little bit here. It's really close. 10 votes separate these two. Really, really close between our B tier and our C tier. Decidueye Memorial tier hanging out with 41 votes, as it looks like our C tier is going to take this thing. Almost 90 votes now. So it's got a pretty big lead. And yes, C tier is going to take it. Honestly, that's fair. I thought it could be D tier. I'm going to be real. I thought that could have been a D tier choice. As we get ready for our next Pokemon. I think Zeraoras are so unreliable. When you see Zeras on your team, you're just like, what are they going to do? Gardy, votes coming in here for Gardevoir. As we're seeing split between the B and the A tier right now. C, D, and S not making their way. I did not expect this to be an S tier. I also didn't really expect it to be a D tier. I think after some buffs, Gardy does kind of sit in the middle for me. I would probably be leaning a little closer to the B tier than the A tier, but this is extremely close between these two tiers. Really 1 or 2 votes separating B and A. I think it's a good Pokemon. I don't think it's great. I think people who play Gardevoir a lot aren't bad though. I think B is fair. I think probably for me, C and A, I could see a reality for it. They're very close. I just don't feel like, for me, I don't see it as an A tier. But we're 1 vote separating these two categories. So I'm gonna let this run for another few seconds right here. This vote's incredibly close. 1 vote separating our B tier and our A tier for Gardevoir. I'm about to close this thing. Or see if we get one more. Now it's tied. I'm going to close it in 3, 2, 1. B tier takes it. 89 to 86. Really, really close. Gardy, congratulations. You made it to the B tier. Congrats, Gardevoir. Our next Pokemon that we're going to be voting on, Blissey. Not a single vote. 4 votes for the Decidueye Memorial tier. I don't know, guys. Blissey in the D tier? I don't see it. I really don't see it. I definitely see S or A. For sure. D tier, no way. C tier, no. B tier, no. S or A for me, for sure. These are some of the more reliable teammates in the game, I would say, are Blissey teammates. They have a pretty straightforward job, and I think they do a good job with it, as we are neck and neck right here between S and A. 98 to 98. 99. I'm going to close this vote here in just a sec, as A tier is taking the lead right now. You got 10 more seconds, Blissey. We got 102 to 98. And it looks like that might be where this thing caps. And it does. Blissey makes it into our A tier. GG's, Blissey. Nice job. Blasty boy. As our voting is commencing here for Blastoise, we have B, A, C, D, and S. B is pretty reasonable, it seems like. I'm actually surprised to see A on there, I have to be honest. I think Blastoises are often not good. But we'll see. B tier doing pretty well. It's B or A right now. Blastoise, you mean Wartortle? I should have asked about Wartortle mains, Tristan. That's what I should have asked about. I feel like Blastoise is, it's an unfortunate Pokemon that people do get stuck on 8, you know? But they do have a great Unite move. And it looks like B tier is taking it right here. Blastoise, you're hanging out with Snorlax in the B tier as we get ready for our next defender, MammoSween. Coming up next in the chat, we're going to see where the vote... Ooh, A tier taking an early lead. B tier coming right up next to it. C, D, and S. C actually getting kind of close. Interesting. This is closer than I expected for the C tier. B tier looks like it is going to take this one so far. All right. B tier up at 81 votes. Taking a big lead on the rest of the tiers. I actually feel like, for me, this is A tier. Personally, I feel like MammoSweens are often pretty good. Like, if you feel like Blastoise is B, then I definitely think Mammo's A. That's just me, though, as it looks like B tier is going to take this thing for sure. We can get another few votes in here, but it doesn't look like it's going to matter. Got almost 20 votes on our next tier. MammoSween going to make it into our B tier. Mother of Thorn, yeah, thank you so much for the 19 months, you absolute hero. PSA, like the stream. I agree. Like the stream, and if you're watching this as a video, like the video here. The Sylveon mains as the votes roll in. C, B, A, all very, very close right now. C tier, taking an early lead. It's close, though. Really close. Even A is catching up right now. Jeez. B tier now ahead. C tier clawing its way back on top. B, C, and A are all super close for this Pokemon, which leads me to believe that in general we're all kind of like, okay, yeah, okay, with Sylvie, it's not terrible, it's not amazing. Sometimes they're pretty good, sometimes they're pretty not good. Looks like we got 74 votes for B. B seems to be leading this thing. We don't have a ton of time left on this vote. It's getting really, really close, but I think B is going to take it. Interesting. I'm trying to think of where I'd put it. I think B is pretty fair. I do. I feel like sometimes they're making some crazy decisions, but sometimes they're just hanging out in that B tier. Sylveon, you got B tier, but you got close to C. You also kind of got close to A right here as we take a look at our next Pokemon. Greedy boy. Oh my gosh, these Greeden votes. As this Pokemon is hanging out in our D tier with an absolute bullet. Wow. People hate the squirrel. Don't love seeing it on their team, that's for sure. Jeez, it's trash, says the chat. Lot of Greedent with a capital D. Greedent, says the chat. Jeez. Jeez. Greeden getting absolutely eviscerated out here, making its way to our D tier. Fun fact, I love Talon and I love Greeden. Don't necessarily love them on my team though, but I do love those Pokemon. As we get ready for our next Pokemon, Greeden making its way to our D tier. Deui. I mean, I feel like having a tier named after you is going to hurt. It's between A and D right now. Wow, all of these are really close. All of these are so close. A tier. Interesting. I'm trying to think. I mean, Decidueye is a really good Pokemon. But man, I feel like Decidueye players are so wildly inconsistent. You know? It's really hard. This voting is really close. It looks like A tier is actually going to take it right here. Some people are saying S. Yeah, I'm kind of with a lot of the chat. I mean, I do feel like it's a bit of a coin toss. Like, it's either it's good or it's just horrible. But I have to be honest, more times I see it horrible. However, that's not what the chat's saying right now, is it looks like the A tier is going to take this thing. A little more voting to be had. We're getting close, but with almost 20 votes separating A and B, we're going to give this thing to the A tier. Another attacker making it into our A tier. I honestly thought attackers would be way, way lower on this list. We've got Zarena up in the chat right now. We're going to see what our chat thinks of Zarena mains. Interestingly enough, we've got really close between D, B, and C. This is fascinating because I guess it's really just depends on where you look at Zarena from. If you're thinking of Zarena mains, I think Zarena mains are extremely good. However, I think most people that you see playing Zarena are so bad. So bad, especially after the nerfs. For a while, this Pokemon could have been played by just about anybody, you know? And the mains for it were just broken. But now I feel like if I see a main for this, Zarena on the team saying they would make me lose. Interesting. Interesting. Nobody knows how to play Zarena. C and B are very close right here. Only a few votes separating them. Deui Memorial tier also extremely close. No one is thinking they're A tier, even though we have a lot of people saying, no one's thinking they're S tier. We have a lot of people saying they're A tier. I'm going to let this vote run for a little bit because it's really close. Only a few votes separate all of these tiers right here. So get your vote in. Get your vote in here. I'm going to give us another 10 seconds. This is really close. It looks like C tier is going to take it, which probably isn't super unfair, but boy, there's a lot of good mains of this Pokemon. So we're getting really close, and yes, C tier is going... Wow, it's so... B tier is just a few votes away. I'll give you 5 more seconds. I don't think you're going to make it. No. Zarena. Zarena with the C tier. Sorry, Serena mains. The vote is on for Dragonite. We're going to see where everyone ranks it. B tier taking an early lead. However, it's close. B is very, very close with C and A. D kind of falling away. Nobody really thinks it's S. I can't imagine anyone thinking a Dragonite player is S. Honestly, I've never seen a Dragonite player that is S tier, I feel like. B tier feels like a fair place to set this thing, and that's where everyone's basically putting it right now. As B tier is taking a commanding lead, almost 50% of the vote is set up for the B tier right here. Dragonite going to find its spot there in the B tier as we get ready for our next Pokemon. C, the next closest choice, which I actually would agree with. I agree it would be C or B. Let's see what everyone thinks of Trevenant. S tier, A tier, B tier. Very, very few C and no D so far, as A and S are in a heated battle to see if this Pokemon's going to make it to the top or not. Looks like A tier is taking a big lead right here. I think they're very good. I think oftentimes the really good Trevs are very, very good. And most Trevs are good. It's hard to find a bad Trevenant, I feel like. They're at least pretty good, you know? And it looks like A tier is going to take this thing. Big lead. S tier very close, but Trevenant making it into our A tier as we get ready for our next Pokemon, Aegislash. The weird thing is, I'm thinking if... I don't even really know anybody who thinks of themselves as a sword main, which is weird. Right now, C tier and B tier are going at it for Aegislash. The chat's saying only run into bad Aegislash mains. Yeah. Boo Skidoo's saying, knowing the Unite player base, I'm seeing these attackers getting rated highly, and I can't help but think people are voting for their own Pokemon. I think you're probably right. I think you're probably right, as the C and B tier have this extremely close. I think either of these would be kind of fair. To be fair, I really don't see a lot of good sword players. I really don't. It's tough. B and C are so close. I'm going to give this another 10 seconds, but right now C has the lead. Because we're going to count this down. C right now with a 4-vote lead over B. And it looks like they're going to take it. I love when you see the S votes. Yeah, they're going to go ahead and take this one. Extremely close, but we're putting Aegislash into our C tier. That's, you know, it's tough. I just don't even see many people who play Sword a lot. I feel like it's really underplayed. We're talking about Hoopa mains and Hoopa players right now. Your general player with Hoopa, I think, is pretty good, and Hoopa mains are usually pretty cracked, in my opinion. We're going to see what the chat thinks of it. As right now, S tier and A tier are both very, very strong for this Pokemon. Hoopa, I mean, to be a Hoopa main, you're usually only playing Hoopa, and you're pretty dang good. I find them to be very useful allies, oftentimes. They're every once in a while, they just clearly don't know what's going on. But, ooh. We got Keiju saying Hoopa's C tier. Interesting. The chat seems to disagree, as Hoopa is cruising into our S tier right here. Again, something to notice just about this tier list right now is how heavily weighted supporters and defenders are. Duraludon, C actually taking a lead. C, B, and D. A is getting kind of close too. Wow, this is a really close vote. One of the closest we've had. I think the other vote that was this close was Mr. Mime, as all of these tiers are pretty close. For my money, I would say, here's the thing, and I know we don't have the tier list split like this. If they're playing Flash Cannon, they're D. If they're playing Dragon Pulse, I think they're A. That's about where I would put it. I don't think C is unfair, because I think you do run into so many like bad Duras playing Flash Cannon who are just doing absolutely nothing. But at the same time, I think players who often play Duraludon and just know how to rip, they're really good. Really good. However, this vote's almost over. We have almost 200 votes in right now, and C tier looks like it's going to take this thing. Very fair. I also agree with you, Davis. Davis Lee on YouTube right now is saying they just don't see a lot of Duraludon mains, and I have to agree with you. I don't see a lot of Duraludon mains either. Doesn't seem like a super popular main. And for that reason, it looks like C is going to take this thing. Duraludon hanging out in our C tier as we get ready for Azumarill. As it looks like everyone's starting off some heavy favoritism for the A tier on Azumarill. And if that's the case, Azu would be our first all-rounder to make it into our A tier, interestingly enough. Garchomp getting very, very close earlier. But right now, huge lead for Azumarill in the A tier. Looks like C, S, and D were all like, yeah, it's not the worst thing in the game. It's not the best thing in the game. It's between A and B. And B is close. A lot of people are saying it's super underrated, does well in their games. That's great. A lot of A for sure. A lot of A for sure, says the chat. Azu getting almost 90 votes. And it looks like we're going to go ahead and lock it up for the A tier. Azumarill, our first all-rounder as we get ready for Espeon right here. Espeon, a lot of A right now. Some B, some S. But it looks like A. Just overwhelmingly, people are thinking A. I also happen to agree. I think Espeons are almost always good. That didn't used to be the case when Espeon was kind of like meh. But I think Espeon's actually pretty dang good right now. Their early secure is pretty good. It's rare that they don't understand, you know, how their secure works. So I think A is actually pretty fair for this Pokemon, as it's already almost at 100 votes very early in this poll. Espeon's going to take an easy A tier, but I am so shocked to see so many attackers in our A tier. This one was an easy win for Espeon. Delphox votes coming on in. A and B and S all doing pretty well to start this thing off. Another attacker doing very well on this poll. Man, I'm surprised to see attackers doing so well, as it's actually really close between B and A. S is actually doing pretty well on this one too. Chat saying if Decidueye is A, anything can be A. You know, sometimes I think people are just, they're voting for Pokemon they like, maybe Pokemon they play. I feel like Delphox, you know what? I feel like Delphox has really not been seen that much lately. I feel like the pick rate's probably pretty low for Delphox right now, don't you think? I never see Delphoxes lately. B because of curse items. I could see that. Delphox getting pretty close here, but it looks like it's going to be taking our B tier as we close in on about 200 votes for Delphox. And it looks like it's not moving too much. Delphox getting the B tier treatment. Welcome to the B tier, buddy. Our next Pokemon is Glaceon. Here come the votes for Glaceon. C tier overwhelmingly starting this thing off. B tier very close. Not many people thinking S. Not many people thinking D either. It looks like it's between mainly C and B, as A is close, but not close enough, it looks like, to make this vote happen. C tier running away with this thing right here. No, it's so close. B tier just overtook it. B tier now moving up. I think some people might be saying, we're not going to get S tier. We're not going to get D tier. I might as well vote B. Wow, B and C are 1 vote away from each other. They were just neck and neck. B tier is up by 1 vote. B tier now up by 3 votes. So close. C tier, 2 votes away. Wow, this is so incredibly close. Only 180 votes in. We can let this get a little closer to 200 burgers. But it looks like B tier is going to take it, just barely edging out the C tier right now. 68 to 64. 68 to 65. Interesting. 69 to 66. It just feels like the C tier can't catch up to it. I'm going to give it 5 more seconds here. But the B tier is going to take this thing. 3 votes just separating the whole way down. Real close. A nail biter for Glaiveon as it makes its way into our B tier. We have our next vote happening right now for Buzzell. So far, A tier, strong early lead. S tier actually doing okay too. B tier coming on in here. But this seems to be a bit of a landslide right now for good old Buzzy Boy, which I happen to agree with. I rarely see bad Buzzell players. I think Buzzell, if you're playing it and you're maining it, you're actually usually pretty good. I think most Buzzells are actually pretty dang good. Now, again, this is not necessarily how good the Pokemon is, but how good you often see players who play this a lot. And I think A is pretty fair for Buzzy Boy. Pretty dang fair. As Buzzell's going to take our A tier. And we move on to Tatar. Tyranitar voting is underway. C tier taking a strong start here. So is the Deui Memorial tier. Yeah. I mean, Tyranitar is all or nothing, right? It's very all or nothing. C tier, I think, is honestly a very fair place to put this. I don't think most people play this Pokemon super well. Maybe B. A lot of people saying D, which I understand. I think this is a hard one. You meant Pupitar. That's what I meant. Yeah. It has the Char Blastoise situation where, you know, a lot of people are just going to sit there, you know, at C. I think this is fair. It looks like C's taking it by over 20 votes. And we're going to move on to Mew. Ooh, S getting a lot of votes. A getting a lot of votes. And it's really not particularly close. The S tier crushing it right now for Mew. The only thing close to it is the A tier. We might have found another Pokemon to hit our top tier right here. Wow. It looks like the S tier is going to hold on strong. A tier is coming close, but I think we're going to hold at S tier right here. It's our first attacker to make its way to our top tier. To be fair, if you're very good with Mew, I mean, you're very, very good, you know? And it looks like it's going to sit in our S tier. Our first attacker to make it as we get ready for our next Pokemon here. Dodrio. We've got some S, some A, some B. Looks like a lot of A tier so far, a lot of S tier as well. A tier, really strong for Dodrio right here. Over 50% of the vote already. Bit of a landslide for Dodrio in our A tier. This would make it the second speedster to make it into our A tier alongside Absol. And yeah, I don't think it's too close right now. Dodrio, A tier, easy. We're taking a look at Scissor. I don't know if we have we do have Scyther on this list, so we're taking a look at just Scissor next. Scissor votes coming in. We got a lot of B, a lot of D, a lot of A. Wow, this is a really close one too. It looks like the chat's pretty split on this Pokemon. B seems to have the most votes, but C and D are extremely close. A lot of division on Scissor right here, which is what Scissor would kind of do to a piece of paper. Okay, B tier right now with the strong lead. 60 votes right now. Over 20 votes almost over the C tier. I think B is maybe fair. For me, it's B or C. D might be a little too harsh unless they're playing jungle, which I think is insane. But for me, it's probably B or C. My bias would probably put it C. but it looks like the chat has spoken, and we've got it here in our B tier. Let's take a look at our next choice, is Clefable. Wow, Clefable crushing it right here, either S or A. And to be fair, Clefable's got a pretty straightforward job, and I don't see many Clefables really veer off too heavily. So I think these are very fair, you know? I think Clefable's a great one to have on your team, and usually people know how to play it. It is nice when a Pokemon is straightforward enough that people will play it effectively, right? And I think Clefable is just like that. Looks like the A tier is going to edge it out right here. S tier is pretty close. But once again, we see a lot of love for supports on this list as we get ready for our next Pokemon, Zoroark. A lot of people are thinking Zoroark mains, very high skill, A tier and S tier, overwhelmingly taking the vote right here, which is probably fair. If you main this Pokemon and you're really consistent with it, I think you're very, very good. I do think it's so hard that you get random Zoroarks that are not good. But this makes sense to me to see A or S right here. Makes a lot of sense. Good Zoros or nightmares. I agree with you. I agree with you, Burnt Beebs. People are saying this is insane. I think it's insane. I don't know. I think his Zoroark main's usually pretty dang good, but I think a random Zoroark is usually pretty bad. So the question is, how often are they playing the Pokemon? How good are they with it? Really close here. Looks like the A tier is going to take it, but it's extremely close. I'll get another couple seconds right here. Gosh, it's so close. This one's just a vote separating them. I think A tier is going to take it. S tier now tied it. A tier technically got there first, so A tier would win. Next vote's going to take it. I'm just going to give it to the next vote. We'll see what it is. S! S takes it. Oh, Sableey is getting absolutely eviscerated right now. This, again, this just goes to show you what your allies, without even knowing anything about you, this just goes to show you what your allies think of this Pokemon the second they see it. This is the most one-sided vote we've had. It's the most one-sided vote. Dude, we gotta have an F tier. Maybe. I mean, yeah, random Sableys rarely provide value. The chat wants a new tier. We now have the Sableye tier. I didn't think it would happen. Nobody thought it would happen. But there you go. Sableye getting absolutely dumpstered. The biggest landslide we've seen so far. Voting is underway for Urshifu right now. Wow, the chat's thinking S. We got A tier taking a strong lead too. A, S, and B. Almost no one thinks it's a C or D. I think this speaks not only to Urshifu's power level, which is pretty dang high, but also to how well people can play it inside of a match. A tier sitting strong. Almost 55% of the vote. Wow. Well, this is an easy win. Easy win. Urshifu, you make it up into the A tier, buddy. Good job. As we get ready for our next Pokemon, I think it's probably pretty fair for Urshifu also. And now the votes are coming in for Dragapult. Starting this thing out, C tier taking an early lead while B and D are still there. Dragapult's a weird Pokemon. Man, I really wish they would give Dragapult some love. I just feel like Dragapult's never really had its big moment in the meta, right? And I think you're seeing that a lot with the vote right here. Interesting to see B tier. I feel like this was going to be a C or D choice. And I don't even think it's really about this Pokemon. It's just you rarely see it. It's really outclassed by some other picks at times. Like, for instance, during the Mewtwo Y meta, it was just bad Mewtwo Y. Like, straight up bad Mewtwo Y. And it looks like C tier is going to take this thing. I could see C tier. I could see D tier. I could see B. I don't even think it's that horrible. I just think it's a hard Pokemon to be extremely successful with, and it's going to take our C tier slot right here. Hanging out with Cinderace. Comfey is very good. I'm very... I don't even know what... I don't know what people are going to say. Wow, it's getting roasted. Because here's the thing. And some people are putting it S, which I don't even disagree with. I was wondering how people were going to sort of rank this thing. D, A, S. It's weird. B and C are nowhere close to this. It is all either D, A, or S. This is so interesting. I think D is just people are... Because there are some people who play Comfey and they're clearly not doing anything. You know? So I think D is really fair. But I also think a lot of Comfeys really do well. And they're like sitting on an ally who is not doing well. So it's tough. But D tier is going to take this thing. D tier. Up next, we have everyone's favorite Pokemon. We were so happy it made it to the game. The leader of your team, Zashin. Interesting. Zashin getting a huge vote for the S tier so far. A tier coming very close as well. The thing, I mean, I kind of agree. I think most Zashins are actually pretty good. It's not the hardest Pokemon to be good with. It's not like Mewtwo level is easy, but it's not the hardest Pokemon to be good with. And I often feel like Zashins kind of know what's up. I'm kind of surprised to see S, I have to say. But I don't disagree that it's a really strong Pokemon. And S tier is actually winning this thing right now. It looks like Zashin is going to take the S tier. It's really close. I'm going to give us another few seconds here just because the vote is so close. Right now, 5 votes separate the two. I'm going to give us another 10 seconds. 6 votes separate them. It's going to be hard for 8. Oh, it's really close. Still 6 votes. I'm going to give it to the S tier. Got really close. But Zashin, people are thinking that Zashin player, often S tier as we get ready for our next Pokemon. All right, voting has commenced. Goodra remains. How do we feel about him? Right now, the chat's feeling pretty strong. They're feeling like an A tier, huh? All right. A lot of A's. Interesting. I think A is pretty good. I think A is a pretty fair choice, right? Thank you, by the way, David, on TikTok for your support. Appreciate you, buddy. I see you there. A tier running away with this thing. Congrats, Goodra. You made it up to the A tier. Next, we have our next defender that was released right after Goodra. Lapdog. All right, voting has begun for Lapras. We're going to see what people think of Lapras mains as well. S and A tier, absolutely crushing it. I think this has more to do with the Pokemon than it does the player, I have to be honest. The thing about Lapras is it's so busted good, and it's not hard to be good with it. It is not a difficult Pokemon to do well with. And right now the chat is saying S or A, and I have to agree. You know? Your Laprases are terrible, Boo? I don't know. I feel like it's really hard to be bad with Lapras. And if you're good with it, I mean, I don't know. I think it's really solid. I think S or A are both fair. I don't think the players are always necessarily the top tier players ever, but I think they handle the kit really well. It's not a hard Pokemon. Really close. 5 votes separate them. I'll give us another couple seconds here, but it looks like Lapras is heading into our S tier. Yeah. Lapras. Welcome to the S tier. As we get ready for our next Pokemon. Candelabra. B and C fighting it out. A, S, and D. Pretty far away. A is somewhat close. C and D are the closest, but C and B are the closest, but B is really taking it. I have to fully agree with the chat here. I think B is very, very fair for this Pokemon. I think Chandelure is actually really good. I think the hardest thing about it is they're always pretty good. It doesn't feel like they're controlling the game, and I don't see a lot of them. So I think a B tier is a really fair place to put this, and that's where it's going to end up. We get ready for our next Pokemon, another defender. How good is your Umbreon ally? How good is an Umbreon main? Not a single vote in the C and D tier yet, as S and A are neck and neck right here. And this is another one just like Lapras. It's hard to be bad with Umbreon, right? It's just really hard to be bad with it. It's so good. There are some really good Umbreons out there, for sure. It's really close. A tier right now taking it. I think that's probably fair. Although I mean S isn't that crazy either. I think A tier is a little more fair, just because I think it's a little harder to do well with compared to like something like Lapras. But I still think Umbreon's amazing. At the height of Umbreon, it was crazy. It was too good, right? Looks like A tier is going to take this thing. Got it by almost 10 votes. Umbreon making its way into our A tier. As you can see, Defenders doing very, very well here. As we're looking at what the chat thinks about Leafeon players right now. Wow, A tier. This is interesting. This was one I was curious how the chat was going to rate this thing. A tier is absolutely crushing it right now. Wow. Just dominating. One of the most... I mean, it's 60% of the vote. I mean, everyone obviously thinks really, really strong. I feel like it's somewhere between A and B for me. But the chat obviously was saying A tier with a bullet. The way this list has it, it has Scyther very late. I'm going to do Scyther next, even though it's not the next release. Could have done it with Scissor. I didn't realize how late in the list you'd see it. Wow. It's either D or A right now. A lot of people are saying they do not like Scyther on their team for sure. This is a really weird one because, okay, we got B actually coming up pretty strong right now too. Always interesting to see kind of where the chat's head is at for a Pokemon like this. It's so close. 40 votes for B, 37 for A, 40 for Decidueye Memorial tier. Like this, and 35 for C. This has got to be the closest vote we've had. We've had a couple votes like this. This might be the closest. 26% of the vote, 25% of the vote, 21 and 20. Wow. One vote separates D and B right now, with B tier slightly having the advantage. Just slightly. Unite person says, I forget it's on the team. I think it's, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are in that boat. These two are dead heat. Right now, B tier is up by 2 votes. 3 votes. Nope. D tier is down only by 1 vote. Wow, this is the closest. I rarely see them too. I rarely see them. Sorry. Thank you. Put Comfy in the wrong tier. Thank you very much, Global. 1 vote separates these two. I'm going to give us 5 more seconds. Right now, it is a D tier Pokemon. And there we have it. D and B almost tied. Scyther goes into our D tier. Jeez. Sorry, buddy. Here we go. Where do people think Inteleon mains lie? Wow. S tier with a huge lead. Now, here's the thing. I actually don't think this is how good Inteleon mains are. I just think this is a good indication of how broken Inteleon is. I think people can play Inteleon somewhat poorly and still look like a superhero. And that's what we're seeing in this chat. Huge wins for Inteleon right now. It does need a nerf, absolutely, as it makes its way into our S tier. And we're going to start talking Mewtwo's, everybody. And now we're seeing the split right here. Some people are thinking D, some people are thinking S, some people are thinking A. Me personally, when I think of the skill level of a Mewtwo player, like a Mewtwo main, I often think of them as, at best, a B tier player. At best. I almost never see them play in a way that I think is very impressive. However, the Pokemon they're playing... Excuse me. I've got the black lung. The Pokemon they're playing, very, very good. Jeez. As this is going to be in our D tier. The S is interesting to me. This is a strong D tier right now, and I happen to agree. I think they're they're just really rough at Pokemon Unite. I don't think they play the game very well, honestly. This is really close to being Sableey level tiers. The Pokemon, good. The player, not so good. A lot of people want Sableey tier. I think most players who play Mewtwo is quite bad. We only have one Pokemon in our Sableye tier. This one's really close. So we're gonna do a quick poll for it. This is gonna be a yes or no. Yes, it goes into the tier. No, it doesn't. I'm gonna do a new poll. Yes means, again, it is in the Sableye tier. No means it sits in the D tier. Here you go. Wow, overwhelmingly, Mewtwo Y is our second Pokemon to make it to our Sableye tier. I mean, universally hated, and why wouldn't it be? Fair enough. Goodbye, Mewtwo Y. All right, everybody. How good do we think Blaziken is? Most Blaziken players? The interesting thing is, before the buffs, I think this would have been lower. I really do. But now, I kind of see where people are coming from, right? A tier. Looks like A tier. Pretty strong A tier choice. Okay. Blaziken, welcome to the A tier, buddy. Next, we have Mimikyu, which is going to be our last Pokemon, and then we're going to do some really interesting voting as well. Mimikyu. Our final Pokemon to vote for. Mimikyu right now, A tier, crushing it right here. Interesting. Interesting. I think A tier is probably pretty fair. I think Mimikyus are pretty good. It's a really good Pokemon, and I think people do well with it. I could see some people saying B. It isn't healthy to die. All right, then I'll live. I'll live. Do I smoke? I don't. No, I'm just sick. Just got a bit of a cold. All right, everybody. This is going to make it to our A tier. Congrats, Mimikyu. I think Mimikyu is such a good release. And those are all of our Pokemon, but we're not done because we should decide what main is the God tier. You're going to vote. You get one vote. And I have no idea how this is going to go. But you get one vote for any of these Pokemon. The one that you think played by a main is the best. Maybe the one you're happiest to see on your team. Maybe the one that just means the most to you. But you get to vote right now. And we'll see what people go for. Wow. A lot of votes coming in for a lot of different choices. A few are neck and neck currently, which is Slowbro, Mew, and Hoopa. Eldegoss coming pretty close, and Teleon pretty close as well. Lapras left out in the cold. So is Zashin. So is Zoroark. Right now, it's really between Slowbro, Hoopa, and Mew. This is interesting. But Slowbro has a strong lead. A strong lead. Not insurmountable, though. It's close. It still can go either way. Hoopa is very close. Mew is very close. Slowbro now starting to take a majority of the votes that are left. We already have 240 votes coming in. And I think it's settled. Now that it's up by 15 votes, it's going to be hard to come back from. And our God tier Pokemon, the Pokemon that we have said as a community, if they main it, they are the best, is going to be the one, the only, the slowest of the bro. There you go, everybody. We've done our tier list. We have a couple of gents getting cut off at the bottom there. Let me see if I can get them on. There you are. There you are, guys. That is our tier list. We all did this together, voted on by the community. Live, we decided how good these Pokemon are to main. And interestingly enough, outside of a few exceptions, we see that this tier list actually in some ways mirrors a lot of tier lists that you would see with Pokemon like Eldegoss, Hoopa, Zashin, and Teleon, Mew, all up in these top tiers, and then some Pokemon that don't do very well down in lower tiers. However, of course, we see things like Mewtwo, Comfey, In our bottom tiers, these Pokemon are obviously so good, but the chat's like, we hate them, which I understand, and they don't think the players who play them are particularly good, or at least they're not good people. Thank you all for joining me doing this live. I have to do another one of these live. Maybe next tier list, actually just ranking the Pokemon in the game. We'll try to do it live. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching live. If you did watch live, please come by and say hi when this becomes a video. I love you all, and I'll see you all next time. Nerf Yeehaw.